I'll take a bottle of water.
Did you guys don't have holy water?
I know.
Alright, so I'm gonna get a whole mess of it.
That's not an issue. That means you're gonna stay long.
That we're gonna be talking.
So. Okay, this is the time we put our cell phones on mute. Reminding myself. All right, it's 5:30 and this meeting of the City of Harbor Springs Planning Commission is now in session. This is Thursday, February 15th, 2024, and it's 5:30 p.m. All right, welcome. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Really appreciate it, and I think we're gonna have a great meeting. First thing on the agenda is the roll call.
Leslie Warren. Thank you.
Here.
Emily Goudet.
Here.
Bob Philma.
Here.
Tony Johnson.
Here.
Bill Mulder.
Here.
Mark Bidet.
Here.
Barry Lustgarten. Here. And Nancy Rondell.
Here.
Mackenzie Bowman, our student rep, is not here. But we do have a quorum.
All right. Maybe the first thing I'm gonna do is introduce who's up here at the table. For those who don't follow the planning commission, and as exciting as we are, I'll tell you who's who tonight. And here we have at the table Victor Sinanowski, our city manager, Jeff Grimm, our zoning administrator, and he has another half job too. And John Icoangeli is our contract planning consultant from the firm Beckett and Rader. The city engages them. He's the actual planning professional in the room, and he knows a lot of stuff and has some great resources. The other folks you see at the table here tonight are residents who volunteer on the planning commission. And the way this works is that we all elect city council members. We have 5 members on city council, and they appoint people to boards and commissions. People who volunteered and are willing to put in a lot of time to work on business for the city. And so that's who you see up here. And let that be helpful. Okay, let's go through the minutes. So we have 2 sets of minutes to take a look at tonight. And let's talk about January 18th minutes. That was our regular meeting. Anybody have any comments on that?
I move to approve the January 18th minutes.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Second. We have a second now. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next set of minutes is February 8th. This was just last week's meeting, our public hearing on the zoning code. And notice Jeff captured the comments really well. Thank you, Jeff, for that. Anybody have any comments or corrections on that?
I move to approve the February 8th meeting minutes.
I'll second it. Yeah, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, good. Let's see. Why don't we get a chair for Wendy? And like Bill, yeah, let's just get everybody seated and. Comfortable. All right, that's great. Thanks very much. All right, next thing on the agenda is public comment on something that's not on the agenda tonight. And the only thing on the agenda is the zoning code review. So this is the time where people can speak up and tell planning commission what you're thinking about on any number of topics. You have ideas, suggestions, criticisms, unlikely, but you're welcome to voice those. So does anybody have anything they'd like to tell us? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Janet Stewart. I'm at 410 Pine Street. This kind of goes back. I know there's been a lot of talk on it, but when I look at the short-term rentals, I do have a problem with the licenses being given in perpetuity to the 61 people who had the licenses to begin with. And I would like at some point in time for the committee to take a look at maybe people get a license for 5 years. And at the end of that 5 years, they go to the bottom of the list. In one way that might discourage people from having short-term rentals if there was no promise that they could rent it for the next 20 or 40 years.
Thank you, Jen. Anyone else? Also, people on Zoom, you're willing to, or you're welcome to comment as well at this point.
If you're on Zoom, you have to raise your Zoom hand and I will unmute you.
All right. Doesn't look like it. So why don't we move on to our next item on the
You
agenda?
got, we did have one.
We do, great.
All right, Frank.
Yeah, Frank. Can everybody hear me? This is Frank Rain
Yes.
and my wife Tina. We're sitting on our couch down in Florida. We wish we could be there because we believe this is a very important topic. I've gone through all of the
Frank, hold on.
document.
Frank, we're only discussing public comment that's for something that's not on the agenda right now. So we'll get back to the zoning code.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll get back to the zoning code.
okay.
All right, great. Well, then why don't we move on
We do have
to,
another one.
oh, okay, great.
Andrew, you can speak. Just remember, we're not taking comment right now on the zoning code.
Okay, thank you. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for allowing us to participate during via Zoom. I appreciate that. Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
This doesn't pertain necessarily to tonight's meeting on the zoning code. However, I would like to say that I think whoever decided that having any meeting regarding a topic as important as a subject that affects our properties directly, such as zoning, probably should not be scheduled during probably the least populated time of year for Harbor Springs. I think February probably is the low point for residents being in town, whether they be full or part-time. I think that it shows, it actually lends itself to maybe a little bit of speculation as to why it was scheduled a meeting of any importance like this, or of a subject of such importance, not necessarily tonight's, but of zoning type issues of such importance that affect all of our properties, are scheduled for February. I think it's silly. I think you should schedule meetings of this importance for when most of the residents are in Harbor Springs and could attend in person and let their feelings be known in person.
Andrew, can we get your last name for the record? Andrew, can we get your last name?
Yes, I'm sorry. Last name's Pappas. I live at 130 West Bluff Drive. Been a resident. I am not a full-time resident, but I've been an active resident of Harbor Springs for close to 20 years. And I'm also involved in local government where my primary residence is. And I'm very well apprised of how zoning affects all of our property values and what we can do with our property. I don't think there's any more important function the local government. First of all, thank you. Secondly, thank all of y'all for your service, because without volunteers, none of this would happen, volunteering to be on these committees. However, citizen participation is equally as important. And I think that, having discussions like this in the dead of winter, when there's very few people in town, whether they be full or part-time residents, I think, because look, hey, even though I'm not a resident of Harbor Springs, I pay taxes there, a lot of taxes. And I think my voice counts just as much as someone that lives there full-time and is a resident, has voting rights there. So that's my opinion. I appreciate you taking it.
Thank you, Mr. Pappas. Point taken.
John Fox.
Yeah, hi. Again, thanks for everybody in your service on these different topics. The one thing, simple enough, I would ask that the website be updated with minutes. I went into the Planning Commission area, and I think the latest it was updated was October 19th of 2023. So again, I'm at 309 Pine Street. Been there, own the place now for 8 years, and obviously not there all the time. And I rely on being able to go into the minutes to educate myself. So that's a simple one, I think.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other comments?
Yeah, Barry.
We have someone?
Barry, yep.
Oh, Barry. Go ahead, Barry.
It's really Becky. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I wanted to further comment on I'm at 500 West Summit, but not right now, but, on the short-term rentals, it's not 61 proper licenses, it's 63. And I want to know how we're going to get back to 61. The two additional, was to avoid litigation, kind of. So is there a plan to get back to 61?
Becky, this is the time where you give us your comments and suggestions.
I think it should be back to 61. And when somebody does not renew their license of the 63, then you don't give another license. So we're down to now 60, 62. And then again, the following year, if somebody doesn't renew, then we're back down to 61, and we stay at 61. Because that's what it was agreed upon, after many, 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 many meetings. So it was just unfortunate, the 63. That's my comment. Get back to 61.
Got that very clearly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm Chip Ironside, 549 Harrison Street, and been tied to this community since 1963. I've been on the sign and lighting committee at the county. I take a little exception to a comment that was made just now about, at last I knew, the planning commission meets all summer long, all spring long, all fall long. That you work on things like the zoning ordinance and that, and you work on that all spring, all fall, and all summer. So I would encourage the people who live away from town, and I was one of those people for a while, but if something important was going on, we would come up from where we live. And I'm sorry, but things have to be done all year, not just in the summertime. And I don't think you had their participation in your meetings to see what was going on. And if you really want to be involved in your community, and you, instead of just bitch about it, then you should do that. I don't do it, but I'm not going to complain because I know the trials and tribulations you guys go through. And so I don't think it's right. That's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Tom?
This question, Tom Graham, Bluff Drive, what consideration you gave the rezoning property for apartment?
We are going to go in depth on the zoning code in just a minute. And so let's come back to that question. Okay, any other questions? Non-zoning code related? Okay, now let's get into it. And the first thing is a little presentation to get everybody up to speed and to the same level. And then we're going to open the public hearing part. And you all can make comments and we'll talk about exactly how to do that. All right, you ready? All right, the topic is the zoning code update program. And Victor, are you showing this screen to everybody on Zoom?
Yes.
Beautiful. All right, so you advance. So here's the outline of the presentation tonight, the major concepts that we're going to go over. And you dwell on that because we're going to go into them right away. All right, so the purpose of tonight's public hearing is to present the recommendations from the zoning subcommittee. So we have 4 people who've been working on these recommendations. Then we're bringing it back to the whole planning commission for their consideration after your comments and suggestions. So we're definitely after input and ideas, and then we're getting ready to take this to city council, perhaps in March next month. All right. Here's a timeline, proposed timeline, but it's adjustable. And here we are with the regular planning commission meeting and getting input tonight, considering what to do. We may, I'm going to ask planning commission what they'd like to do. We may schedule another special meeting to take all the input that we get tonight, factor that in and decide what the next step should be. And then perhaps take a first presentation for city council on March 4th. Next slide, Mickey. So the big question is why update the zoning? And this is a pretty obscure thing, and but it's extremely important. And the main reason is that we just recently finished updating the city's master plan, and every city and every township by state law has to have a master plan, and it has to be updated every so often. It's about 10 years, if I recall correctly. And then the zoning code needs to follow and sync with the master plan, and that's a state law. The other thing beyond the state law is we want to be proactive in anticipating the future needs of Harbor Springs residents. So there's a lot of information out there. We've learned a ton through the master plan process, and we think we can anticipate what our residents are going to need over the next 10, 20, and 30 years. But you'll help tell us what you think about that. And also, this is a pretty big one, is to provide more choices for residents about how they use their property and how they configure their property. And we'll talk about why that makes sense. And I'm going to show you some demographics in a little bit, and I'll show you how our population is older than most already, and probably going to age even faster than others. So what that means for our aging population and things that they might want to do with their property to help them. And housing demand in the region remains extremely high, seems almost insatiable. And there's, we think, a partial mismatch between the types of homes in our zoning code that are currently favored and what residents are going to need and want. And so here are these key goals that we pulled out of the master plan that have to do with zoning and like housing in particular. And the first one is goal 3. New housing development and redevelopment will need to address the full economic spectrum of people who live, work, and recreate in the city. And there's some action items under each one of those. The next one is to develop a housing strategy in which residential parcels will be developed in a manner consistent with existing neighborhoods and will promote housing across the income spectrum. And we're also supposed to, we've signed up to research and explore alternative housing types that would provide housing opportunity for a broad spectrum of persons seeking housing in the city. So that's the master plan that was worked on 2 years ago. It was adopted by city council, and now we're obligated to have a zoning code that supports that. On the economic development side of the master plan, a couple of key goals are our town will be comprised of a viable, community-oriented establishments that foster and recognize the city's resort and recreation team. And it will be a home to a diverse mix of businesses and industries, et cetera, and develop a program that encourages the reduction of fossil fuel-based transportation activities and encourages pedestrian or clean energy-based transportation. So it's in the master plan. And here are the resources that we've been using, studying, and learning about. And one is the zoning reform toolkit by the American Planning Association, independent group made up of professional planners. This book called Missing Middle Housing is kind of the Bible of a movement to go back to some traditional roots in American towns and cities. And it provides some suggestions for ways that housing opportunities can be improved for people in your town. And the AARP has done a lot of thinking about housing. And they've got a booklet called Making Room that talks about what seniors are going to need. And we drew from that. Then the final thing is from the Michigan Municipal League, which is an organization of cities, townships, and such in Michigan. And they've got a pattern book for homes for the 21st century that draws on traditional forms and ideas. Pretty interesting. So let's talk about Harbor Springs demographic. This is what we learned during the master planning process, and it was stunning to us. In the gray is the city of Harbor Springs proper. In the blue is our surrounding area, 49740. So it's most of the 6 northern townships as well. And what really jumped out at us is our population above 60 years old is almost 55%. And in the surrounding areas, that contrasts to about 41%. So we're significantly older than our surrounding area and significantly older than the state average. Not that you'd know it from the people in this room. And here's the other thing that was a stunner to us, and that is the number of one-person households. And so 43% of our households in the city are made up of a single person. And that's a growing trend nationally and statewide as well, but we're way on the high side of it. And we're probably gonna get more so with that.
Excuse me, Bill, I'm getting a lot of text from people on Zoom. Nobody, they can't see the screen or the presentation at all. Is it recording?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Screen is sharing. So. Not sure why I wouldn't see it, but.
Right, will you fill us in if you?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Brenda. And so our average household size is 2.15 people and slightly bigger than the surrounding, or slightly smaller than the surrounding area. So that really makes us think we have all these homes and households with one person in them. And that was stunning to us. I don't know, maybe it's not to you. But it got us thinking about maybe what our residents are going to need in the future. All right, next slide, please, Victor. So that's now, and here's what the future has in store for us, they say. The total county population is expected to grow by about 2.5% in the next 20 years. And that's actually really good in Michigan. Many counties are going to be in negative growth mode, but we're eminent is going to be positive. And then when you break that down even further, the 60 plus age group over the next 20 years is expected to grow at about 15%. So that bubble of our age group is definitely growing and is expected to grow even more. So it's really be an even higher percentage. Here are the actual breakdowns in 5-year increments. So in some places, the growth of the 60 plus group will be 18%. So they say. And, with our higher population of older people, we suspect that we may even see faster 60+ growth than that. And here's another thing that stunned us. We used to have about 300 more full-time residents than we do today. And that was only 20 years ago in the 2020 census. So we're trying to think, what could be the cause of that? And that decreasing household size probably plays a big role in it. And these are full-time residents. So these are people that have, vote here and they have clear that this is their primary residence. And so, just think back, if you were here 20 or 30 years ago, does it seem less crowded now, more crowded? It's hard to tell, it's subjective, but yeah, we used to have 300 more people. Here are some comments that we've heard. These are anecdotal. They're from people that would say, I don't need this big house now. I wish I could find a nice smaller one near stores. Now that I'm older, I don't want to live in the country. I want to move into town for convenience. My parents want to stay in their home, but they would need a smaller one, smaller, one-story house because they can't do stairs anymore. I'd love to have a low maintenance house in town for the 6 months out of the year and travel the rest of the time. We're a young couple and we don't even want a big home to take care of. And I'm not ready to own a home yet. I wish I could rent in this place. So those are typical comments that we've heard, but those may check with what you've heard, what you've been thinking, or they may not. And then had a conversation with a friend who's on the call tonight, and he said he and his wife have never run into anybody in Harbor Springs that would want to downsize and stay in town. That they would generally go to assisted living or long-term care, probably somewhere out of state, so maybe somewhere warmer. And that shocked me because, I don't know about you, but my plan is to fight tooth and nail to stay out of long-term care or something like that. And I would appreciate some options that would let me stay in town. Anyway, AART says 86% of people said they wanted to remain in their current community and their current home if they possibly can. And one more data point that we're taking in, all right? And then here are a couple of survey questions from the master plan survey that we did in 2021. And first question is, what type of housing would you like to see in the city of Harbor Springs to encourage more within the city limits? And the biggest response was smaller single-family homes. So almost 68% of people said that. Then interestingly, the second biggest response was duplexes, triplexes, and townhouses. So that sure got us doing a lot of thinking. And, but interesting, look at the third one. A lot of people would like larger single-family homes. So opinions all over the place. Some would like smaller, some would like larger, some would like multi-unit kind of an approach. And there were also people weighed in on rental apartments and other options. So, and then this question was about neighborhoods in Harbor Springs should include quality housing for all residents of the community. And for the top three bars, 78% said that this was either most important, very important, moderately important. How can you say no to that? Anyway, so those are all the data points and inputs that the planning subcommittee has taken in and is informed our recommendation. And so kind of in summary of what's going on statewide and nationwide, households are getting older and smaller, and we're doing that in spades. One-person households are on the rise. Here's an interesting one. The makeup of a household is fluid. And so it's not mom and dad and 2.5 kids anymore. It's one person, or it's actually roommates. It's maybe a grown child or two comes or goes for a while. And, so a household isn't what it used to be. It's fluid and it's flexible. Multi-generational households are making a comeback. So the traditional family type approach where people take care of each other. There's a shortage of assisted living options. And from what I've read, that's likely to get worse in the future. There's fewer and fewer people to take care of us all when we need it. Then older people would like to stay in place or age in place, we mentioned that. And we learned that older and younger people would also like to walk and bike more and drive less. And then the last one is interesting, that older and younger people often are going to want similar housing options, and they may not prefer a traditional detached home like we all did. I think the final piece of data for you tonight, before we get into the recommendation that comes from all this, is that this is a study done by a housing advocacy group here in northern Michigan, and they used a consultant, and here's the demand for housing that they've identified over the next, well, we're already 2 years into it, so next few years. Countywide, it looks like about what, 3,300. There's a demand for 3,300 new housing units of some kind, combination of rental apartments and homes to purchase. The data is only at a county level, so we kind of derive what it would be for the Harbor Springs, greater Harbor Springs area. And it's significant. I can't add that up, 600, 720, maybe something like that. And then in the city of Harbor Springs, if we were to take our proportionate share, is a conceptual demand for 125,000 units of some type. It doesn't mean we have to solve 125,000 housing. That's not our rule. But just the data point is that the demand seems to be there. So the implications are, we see a partial mismatch between the types of homes that our zoning code favors and what residents are likely going to want in the future. We think they're going to want smaller, simpler homes, low maintenance, no maintenance home and yard, house and yard, adaptability for changing household structure and size, private space for extended family members or caregivers, and more dwellings that can be rented by year-round residents. Very, very few of those today. Okay. Take a breath. Those are the inputs, the data, the demographics, everything that we've learned that now factors into the recommendation. Okay. Melinda, are you here? What are you hearing?
They're okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
thank
you. Here's the start of the recommendations that we're making for the zoning code. Today's zoning code is 160 pages or something, or maybe more. And it's kind of clunky, more than kind of clunky. Looks like it was written on a typewriter. Columns and some crude tables don't line up. The data is hard to parse for people who actually use it and looking to build a house or remodel. It's pretty tough. Jeff spends a lot of his time translating it, and so it's ready for an update. And what we're looking to do is simplify it, streamline it, modernize it, use tables and illustrations where possible instead of words, and remove requirements that are already addressed in the building codes. And then we'll sync with the county and the nearby townships where that makes sense for Harbor Springs, and to reduce or eliminate bureaucratic processes. All right, let me take a drink here.
Just to expand on your topic there, Bill, the existing format of our current zoning code, I think, is the same format that it started in 1976. So
Did we even have a zoning code before that?
we didn't have a zoning code. We had some ordinances. I think somebody brought in an ordinance book of some zoning regulations from back in the 50s. So we had some regulation.
All right, well, one of the main parts of a zoning code are zoning districts. These are different areas where different things are possible or prohibited. And we had 17 we have 17 zoning districts in our little 1.5 mile square city. And I'm sure there were good reasons for that structure, but it's really become difficult for residents to understand and professionals to use and Jeff to administer. And we think that there's a good way to simplify that. So I would like Dawson to pass. So this is a before and after. We'll just pause for a second. Sorry. Good stuff, you guys. I've got one. Well, I look at it online. This is the experience.
Again.
I don't know if
That's where we are now.
Yeah. That's good.
If you don't wish one, please, return it to me, because I'm not sure that is not good.
Okay. So this is the original, this is the current. And then we need to and then somewhere along, somewhere we have. Folks on Zoom, sorry for the delay, we're passing out some maps here. Paper copies to the- If you have, it's more like.
Yeah.
No, you find your property on there. Okay. All right, you ready? All right, so the medical is recommending that we could collapse zoning districts from 17 down to 9. And simplify this pretty rapidly. And here's the detail on how the zone would be collapsed. And so if you're finding your home, it's likely currently in one of these R ones, would be AR. That's where the vast majority of our territory in the city is located in the residential districts. And what we're proposing is that all those could be collapsed into something we're calling residential neighborhood, RN. That would be by far the biggest district, and that's the peachy colored one that you see on the new zoning map. And then we're taking, we're recommending that the areas where we have waterfront homes today be all collapsed into a single residential waterfront district. There's no change to the mobile homes district. And residential multiple stays, residential multiple, there's very few places where there are apartment buildings and those kinds of things. The central business district gets slightly expanded. We're collapsing zoning districts above the bluff into a new district called convenience business. So the only district, only business district below the bluff will be the CDB. Waterfront, this is not waterfront homes, but waterfront parks and properties and such. And manufacturing stays the same, that's just in a very, very small area up where the boat storage sheds are on White Road. And then the community district are things like, government buildings and parks. Okay, next slide. All right, just last week, 1 week ago, we heard a lot from the folks who are, who's over in the agricultural district. And, they made some really good points, I think. And, one of the main points, it was a nuance that I had missed when we were doing this, and it was, yeah, we understand you're gonna let us keep doing agricultural things, if we come and get special land use. And, we thought about that for about a minute and said, yep, that's not right. And, who needs more government, who needs more regulation and commission? So Victor came up with an idea for what's called an overlay district. And, here, where it would be, if you look at the western properties and at the far edge of the city, that are stay in the agricultural, zoning district. And that would give our agricultural, property holders by right, use, for agricultural uses, including farm operations, market gardening, greenhouses, nurseries, orchards, vineyards, and we threw in beekeeping as a bonus. Coming thing. And, this would apply to all the properties within the overlays, and it doesn't expire, it doesn't go away. If you sell your property, it passes to the next owner. So that lets us keep the simplified structure, but it also protects the agricultural uses for our residents there. You have no permissions, no anything. So I thought that was a pretty good solution from Victor. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just gonna give you a really quick view of what uses would be allowed in each of the proposed districts. Residential neighborhood, where a lot of people's homes would be single family, duplexes, triplexes, which would require special land use, and accessory dwelling units. So these would be like guest cottages, and we're going to talk in depth about each of these concepts. So, this is where people have some concerns. And we're going to talk about those too. And then for commercial uses, it would be home occupations. We're in the wrong. Sorry. Go back, home occupation, the thing we're calling an accessory commercial unit, something that's garnered a lot of attention, and if you get your thoughts on that. And then all of our residential properties with water access would be in the residential waterfront district. What color is that? What color? Blue. That's right. So you can see that on the proposed zone map. And the uses there would be agricultural, commercial uses would be the same. Residential multiple, that's the current RM district, is very small. This is multifamily 5+ cluster housing. You could have a single family if you wanted to, triplex, triplex, quadplex, all required. And there are more commercial uses possible under the plan in the residential multiple. Mobile home park stays the same. Central business district. So this is the business district below the bluff downtown. And what's new here is we're rolling together the former B1, B2, and CBD into it. And what's new is now we're suggesting some design guidelines for buildings that be going on a major remodel or being built in downtown districts to keep look and feel, but still allow enough latitude for an owner to do what they need to do. And commercial uses are all the ones you can imagine. Convenience business, so this is above the bluff, it would include IGA, it would include the 2 strip malls, and tons and tons of commercial uses would be there as they are today. And somebody could do residential there if they needed to or wanted to. The waterfront district has the same boundaries as today's. There are no residential uses allowed there. And commercial uses are things like recreation, private club, marina, boat storage, marine construction, and more. The manufacturing district is the one on White Road where the boat sheds are. And there are no residential uses allowed up there, but the commercial uses would be boat storage, self-storage, distilling, brewing, and wine manufacturing. And a tasting room, food manufacturing, and many, many more. And whether anyone would ever do those kind of uses up there, I have no idea. Then the last district is the community district, same boundaries as they, this is things like parks, public services, government buildings, and schools. So that's thrilling stuff. And we'll come back.
You want a whole question?
Yes, if you wouldn't mind, yeah, for sure. And the next concept that we're recommending is called a flag lot. And this is where an owner who had a very deep lot, if they wanted to, could sell the back portion of their lot, and the new user would have access with the driveway that is next to the first house. So it's an idea that could allow the construction of a very few modest sized homes. And there aren't many of these that are going to be deep enough to do it. It was a very small scale idea. And yeah, so the name comes from the pole, and then it's the flag. Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about multi-unit. And I know this is an area of big concern. It was for me too in the beginning. My thinking has evolved so much since learning about all this stuff and examining it. And duplexes have a bad rep. We all know what a bad duplex looks like. And if you're not for you, maybe it isn't one that you want in your neighborhood. But in learning about them, we're seeing designs now like this. Doors on different faces, but well, as Mark Boudet has informed us, articulated facades, and he's told us a bunch of architectural terms for what something attractive. And so all the experts in our study, we think this could be an efficient approach to help some people use the property to meet their changing household needs. They could have a family member live on the other side, they could have a caregiver live on the other side, they could rent the other side as well. And the key thing is, we've said it has to meet exactly the same dimensional requirements as any other home, any other single unit home. So they can't be bigger, it's going to be closer to the street, closer to the side, anything, and they have to have these features that we define to make for an attractive kind of structure. And that's why we think they're not harmful, or wouldn't be hurtful, but they could be very positive addition to a neighborhood of growth needed. You'll tell me what you think about that. Okay. Triplexes. Hey, money. And we'll share it. Thanks. Triplexes have the same advantages, but they do required by special land use in every district. And again, they have to meet exactly the same size requirements as a single unit house. So if there's a vacant lot in your neighborhood, somebody wants to come build a single family house, they have to perform in a sense, they have an imaginary box that they have to build inside of, and the requirements would be precisely the same. So, one of these might have 2 or 3 doors to it, but it's going to look like a house. And quadplexes are a very niche thing, and be surprised if anybody would ever build one. It would be allowed in a residential multiple in the B1 business. So, unlike let that sink in for just a second, and then we'll go to next topic, which we think can be pretty useful. So the new name for a guest cottage is an accessory dwelling unit. And it's, we've had these for 100 years. They're all over town. A lot of them look like that, with a garage, apartment above the garage. And, we, actually, and some look now, they could be standalone. So, and we do have guest cottages on various houses. So I'm going to diverge for a minute and talk about another philosophy that we talk about in the planning commission all the time. And that is personal choice and property rights. And every time it seems like we make a decision, we're always balancing somebody's property rights to do with the property, what makes sense for them, what they need to do, versus does it harm the rest of the community somehow? And, I think what you might have seen with our 17 zoning districts is we've had tighter and tighter regulation, more rules, more permission required to do anything. And it's grown up for fine reasons over the years, but we think it's due for a reset. And what we're trying to do is find opportunities to give property owners more choices and more options without permissions to do what you need to do with your property. So if you're a free market kind of a person, and you're a person who doesn't like regulation, you're, and that's what a lot of these recommendations are based on. And here's a particularly egregious example. In our current zoning code today, if you, anybody have a guest cottage? Yeah, if you want to build one, you need to come and appear before the planning commission. You need to the support of your neighbors. You need to present your plans, and you need to swear to like 7 different criteria before the planning commission can give you approval to use your guest cottage. And we call them guest quarters. And so here's the point that we've gotten to in Harbor Springs, and that is, if you have a guest cottage, you can have only family members and friends stay there. They can only stay for 21 days, 21 consecutive days. And then they have to go away for at least 30 days. So that's where we are. And that's why we think it's time for a reset and roll back some of these restrictions that just don't make sense anymore. Do you remember during COVID when families wanted to be together and many came up here? Mine did. And, I just don't think it's right for government to tell you who can stay on your property and for how long and how long you have to go away for. So that's what we're trying to do. So there've been some great comments flying around about, government taking over Harbor Springs. Plus the funniest thing, because we're really trying to go the other way, to have less regulation where it's possible and to give property owners more choices. And you'll tell us what you think about that concept, I'm sure. Okay. So the benefits of an ADU are that they could be one of the tools that a homeowner could use to adapt to their changing household configuration. Could provide housing for younger or older family members, grown kids, come here when they're trying to get launched and give you a little space and give you each a little space. It could be a way that an older resident could house a caregiver or a caretaker. In fact, it might be the edge that somebody would need to hire a caregiver, because it's going to be hard to do. And it could be a low maintenance opportunity for older residents. And we think it retains the character of the neighborhood. Some people are going to say, you're nuts, Bill, that destroys our character of our neighborhood. We don't think so, because we got them all over today. We probably have more than 100. We approve 3 or 4 a year, and they're everywhere. We've had them for 100 years. Okay. Oh, and it could not be used as a short-term rental. So. Property rights and all that, but. You know, we're gonna draw the line there. And so here's the next concept. This is a derivative of that last one. And this has also gotten a lot of attention. Love that. Looking for your input on this one. This is called an accessory commercial unit. So this is a chance to operate a micro business. And perhaps incubate a new business idea. And it would be something that you could operate on your property. It could be attached or it could be detached. And you have to be the business operator. You can't contract it up to somebody. And you could, only you could operate this thing. It's not going to be in your front yard. It's not a kiosk. And it would be limited to a few low impact businesses. Has a maximum size of 800 square feet. And it requires special land use approval. Okay. And here are the businesses that we've spec'd out for you. Professional services like accounting, architecture, etc., counseling, tutoring, art lessons, music lessons. People have given piano lessons in their rooms for centuries. Set a coffee shop, Laura Cafe, yoga, hair salon, barbershop, seamstress, tailor, alterations. Yes, Tony.
Bill, can you go back one slide? There was one point you skipped over. I think it's important to mention. Size of 800 square feet or 50% of the principal residence.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So if you have a 1,200 square foot home footprint, you could only have a 600 square foot accessory commercial unit. And the benefits are, we think it strengthens the 15-minute walkable city and provides some valuable services closer to home potentially, could prevent some driving, builds a sense of neighborhood community, and maybe an opportunity for a homeowner to start a business, earn some extra income. And I think it could attract some full-time residents who could be kind of a good work opportunity. If you think that's radical or uncomfortable, I did too. Again, this is one where my thinking can be done. And we did a survey of longtime residents. And here are the kinds of businesses in the neighborhoods that they remembered. Included flower shops, which we still have today, a party store, fish market actually, vacuum and sewing machine repair, bed and breakfast, hair salon, barber, hotel, motel, lumberyard, sawmill. We're not recommending sawmills. Or auto repair, restaurants, paint retailer, dressmaker, gas station, commercial flower garden, resale shop, even a tea house on Pine Street. Tom Graham, be able to help us flesh out our listing part of it.
That was there for a long time.
So just to clarify, you can have an accessory structure on your lot, and that can be a detached garage, it could be a shed, it could be any number of buildings, any number of purposes. It could be a pergola. Is that right, Jeff? Pergola would be an accessory structure. Yeah. Yep. So we've set guidelines for those. We've actually made those guidelines a little stricter where they an accessory structure has to be a bit farther from your property line to give your neighbors a little more space. And so you can have accessory structure, which is a garage. A derivation of that is the accessory commercial unit, which has to meet exactly the same placement and specs, so it's not out in your front yard. And an accessory dwelling unit has to meet the same specs as well. So those are the two additional uses of accessory structure. The other thing that we're really working on is reducing administrative processes by setting clear standards. And this is one that we think could really help residents as they bring new ideas forward. And we're recommending more site plan approvals by committee, by a smaller working committee, rather than this whole group. And there's probably a 60-day process that you have to go through to bring a special land use approval to the planning commission. Pretty thorough documentation. The city has to notify your neighbors and it has to schedule a public hearing. So we think that's overkill these days. We're looking for ways to streamline that. And this is what we came up with, was this administrative committee. made up by, city staff, a member to the planning commission, and a, professional planner. And then, anybody can still call for a full, commission review if they want to. So another way we're trying to get, a little bit less government and less delay and less fees for residents. And then, here's an interesting one. Many of our homes and properties are in some type of association. So if your property is in a condo association, you have condo bylaws that regulate what you can do with your property. If your property is in a homeowner association or a landowner association, we have tons of associations, or it's under some other kind of a lease or deed restriction. The uses that we just talked about may not be allowed, probably aren't allowed. HOAs are notoriously strict. And so some of these ideas really only apply to a lesser number of the properties in the city. And, when a person buys a property in an association, they voluntarily agree to the rules and the standards that are part of it. And that's great. There are some very pleasant associations, and that's great. There are really nice, Birchwood is fantastic. Windward outside the city, those are all great. But philosophically, our thought was, for the other 75% of the properties in the city, why don't we give them a little bit more latitude? People on the planning commission kind of favor a bit more variety and vitality in the other areas. And then if people want to, be part of an association and have strict regulations, then that's great. But we think we have a chance for a bit more freedom. Okay. I think that's the last slide. Okay. Let's take a breather for a second, and then we're going to open up the public hearing and we'll talk all about it.
Ottawa Street. There's like 20 or 30 homes on Ottawa Street, or different zoning districts, depending on where you are on the street.
All right.
That's a great example.
We'll be right to you, Jim. Okay, the next part of the meeting is the public hearing. And do we have a motion to open the public hearing? Make a motion to open the public hearing. Great, we have a motion. Do we have a second to open it?
I'll second that.
Tony seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the public hearing is open at 5:32 p.m. 6:32 p.m. An hour. Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for coming and joining by phone tonight to hear that. It really makes a difference. It's so appreciated. Okay.
Bill, thank you for doing all this.
Okay. Appreciate it. So this is the way the city comment process works. And I'm going to give you all the rules because we got so many people that probably want to have some input tonight, and we want it all. So people in the room and people on Zoom are able to comment, and each person can speak one time on a particular agenda of interest. One we have, and you get 3 minutes. And we have to time you, nothing personal, but it does help people to focus their comments. And so, yeah, if you can think of, your main points, that's fantastic. And you'll be speaking to the planning commission, not to other members of the audience. So it's like not to get into discussion. And then here's the part that feels a little funny sometimes is like, you'll be making a point and you'll say, but And then, do you do this or do you do that? And we'll be sitting here not answering. And so that's the idea, is like, you're supposed to tell us your feelings. And if you were to sneak a question in, I'll write it down. And then when we close the public hearing, then planning commission will discuss, and then we'll try to, pick up some of the main points that people brought up. So that's the way we do it. You can't give your 3 minutes to someone else. So it's yours to use. Direct all comments to us. Nobody gets to interrupt somebody else. And then we'll close the public comment session, and then we'll discuss stuff and try to hit those meeting points.
Bill, I'd like to add that we'll go to in person first, and then we'll go to Zoom. So if you're on Zoom, just wait a little bit, because we're gonna take in-person comments first, and then raise your hands, and then we'll eventually call you one by one.
Okay. Sound good? Who would like to get started? Oh, and you, please stand up and introduce yourself so that we can get everybody's names.
Name and address.
Name and address is good. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Kathleen Sarah. We own a property on 4th Street. My question regarding all the details that you provided, I guess my recommendation would be for ADUs and ACUs that they follow the architectural integrity of the property that they are affiliated with.
Point taken. Not that we're answering questions, but we can confirm that when we close the public hearing. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
My name's Ellen Waller. I live at 2625 Pennsylvania. I have 2 questions. One is, I missed the architectural or the agricultural overlay part. I didn't really get that. And if somebody could provide just a summary of that, so that I'm clear. And my second question is for the accessory dwelling units. What zones in proposed new zones are they acceptable in? Is it all zones or just a few?
So was that ADU?
The accessory dwelling unit? Yes, ADU.
Got it. This presentation is available on the web also. And it's right in the meeting notice for tonight's meeting. So you can click on that, and that had that information for anybody who'd like to check it out again. Okay.
Janet Stewart, 410 Pine Street. This is probably not as important as a lot of the issues, but first of all, I want to thank you all for all the time and effort you put into it. I cannot imagine that. It's a really good job. I just have one issue, and that has to do with chickens. I personally.
That was an oversight on my part. And so in this proposal is something that people find kind of wacky, but others are pretty interested. We put it out there because there's been so much interest in agricultural uses. And we were dissolving or folding in the agricultural district. And so number of residents have inquired over the years about could they keep some egg laying chickens. And so we put it in there for consideration by the public and by planning commission and council. And the way it reads is that you could have 6 egg laying chickens, but no roosters in a pen. So sounds funny to some, sounds great to others. So it's pretty interesting. Back to Janet.
I am not in favor of it, for some reasons that might never, come to fruition. I mean, they can spread salmonella, they can be noisy, and they can attract foxes, coyotes, whatever. But saying that, I looked at Article 5, which is pretty simplified as far as what the expectations are. I would ask that the planning commission take a look at the ordinance in the city of Ann Arbor, who's had it for, I believe, since at least 2009. They have a couple of things that I think we're missing. one of the things is that they allow up to 6 chickens, but if you're going to have between 3 and 6 chickens, you have to have the approval of your adjacent neighbors. So I would ask that you take a look at that. They also, and that permit lasts for 5 years. They also recently added a second permit for 1 to 2 chickens, and that one is a 1-year permit. The other things I know they have to be kept in a coop and or fenced in, I believe. The issue is depending upon the type of chicken you have, some chickens can fly over 4-foot fences as well. So I think that one needs a little more detail on what's expected, what type of permits, and also recourse if you have a problem with a neighborhood chicken.
Thank you very much.
Chip on inside 549 Harrison Street. First, I'd like to say that I agree with what she just said. I mean, no, they're minimal, but I would prefer, my wife would prefer that you deep six the chicken idea. Just because it just, I like the idea that I think your neighbors should be consulted in something like that, you know? And at the very least, if it goes through, please put something like that in there. I'm gonna jump around a little bit. Your idea on trying to go to administrative approvals and items like that, that's not bad, but I think you should encourage somewhere working in there where you send the adjacent property owners, particularly in a residential area, if some of these other things are gonna go on, like ADUs and all that, then they know that something's gonna go on and they can partake. That is part of what the city's supposed to do. That is, I mean, it's fine to be able to say, you know, oh, that's given by right, but you don't have to have a site plan reviewed anymore. But I'm afraid that that's not good for your residential harmony. It does help in not having all planning commission meetings and that, so I agree with it. The other is the ACUs. Please don't do that. You have home occupation. I'm an architect. I do things, and you know, I have no problem with somebody who does hair. I have no problem with somebody who does music lessons because they have one person that comes. But just think about something. I don't care if it's an 800 square feet or 100 square feet. We're not going to get just neighborhood people coming here. Once somebody finds out, and don't forget, you have the graphic of how many people live just outside the city limits. And these meetings are being talked about from a lot of people outside the city limits. They want to know what's going on, you know, and this and that. They will be the ones that will come to these little shops and partake. Now, if they got parking for them, then that, it's bad enough if you have a big yard sale and you get 20 cars coming down there. That's a big enough thing for a neighborhood to have to absorb, but that's part of life. And like I said, things under home occupation because the visitation is so low. But I'm afraid that if you do the other, you're really opening a Pandora's box. And remember, zoning was initiated to stop spot zoning, and that is kind of spot zoning. You know, look at Waterford Township and look at what they went through with no zoning and then to a still zoning. And half of the neighborhoods went and did all they could to get you know, I'll step shortly, but get that out of the realm of the zone because the people in the residentials didn't like it.
Okay.
So I think you're really opening a Pandora's box. So please think about consolidating that with home occupancy, but don't give us a store. I remember Kronk's Fish Market today.
We gotta wrap up.
Oh, yeah, okay, but today, could you imagine what Kronk's Fish Market would be doing? They wouldn't have been able to handle the parking over there. They would have been parking in this lot here for people to go over there.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else in the room have any thoughts? Now we can come back also.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Tom Sheldon, 258 4th Street. First of all, I applaud the commission for streamlining and modernizing. I think that's great. I believe in free market but I also believe in small government. How much time has the group thought about how much government will have to expand to patrol, police, and monitor this? To echo the gentleman who just spoke, coffee shops and yoga shops, where do those people park? How did that rooster get here? Is he just a family member visiting? Doesn't live here? So I see a lot of nuances there. I guess my other question would be, what economic benefit to the city from either the federal level or the state level for creating this redevelopment ready district? What is that economic value from state or feds for recreating this district? Also, I noted that this 15-minute walking town concept started in Paris. Mark probably knows this better than I do. Paris has 21 million people, 20 arrondissements, 9,900 people per square mile. We have, what, 1,000? This is taking place in Portland, Oregon, and also Cleveland. Is it appropriate for our village?
Thank you very much. Listen,
Hi, I'm Ken Hart. Just moved in 4811 State Road, so I'm a bit up the road a bit, but, been in the town for almost 2 years now, going on 2 years. Wife and I just moved from California. Kind of going along the line with what this gentleman here said. California has 15-minute cities and other ideations like that. I came from Palm Desert. My in-laws are up by San Francisco, a little hamlet called Hillsborough. Up there, anybody that's got more than 3/3 of an acre or 1/3 of an acre, and they have a tiny house, ACU, ADU, whatever you want to call them, they're practically saying, okay, eminent domain, we've got so many immigrants, homeless, etc. You got to give them a place to live now. It's happening. It's happening in smaller neighborhoods, well-to-do neighborhoods. My in-laws could have sold their house for $4 million this year, but they can't, because their neighbors are going through this right now. It's making it hard for them to get out. I was lucky, I came from Palm Desert. Palm Desert has kind of housing communities like this with commercial zones input and whatnot. If you have larger than a 1/4 acre over there, and you have a shed or some other sort of dwelling, you see you're trying to work out of, they want to come in and restructure that for zoning so that it can be habitable for people coming in. Okay? There's a lot of government going on, a lot of small governments being taken over by the big governments, forced to do things. I don't want to see that. I'm a free market kind of guy, small government. Okay, I want to see the same neighbors I have, you know, this year and last year. I want to be able to see them in 10 years and not a whole bunch of people that come and go, or those fluid, as we called it in the presentation. Thank you for the presentation, by the way. I did appreciate it. It's very informative. You know, I think we should scrap this whole thing. If you want to redo the zone, we can redo the zones, but let's govern. Let's govern.
thank you very much. Brenda.
Thanks, Phil, for your presentation. I think you did a nice job, and it all looks, it looked pretty rosy tonight. And I think those of us who have been following this for years closely know that this goes a lot deeper than what we just saw tonight. And just real quickly regarding chickens, we've already had in the driveway next to us, a coyote devoured a doe, a huge large doe, right in the middle of my neighborhood of broad daylight when they were developing Lower Shore Drive. People's dogs were getting killed. Their small children, they had to watch their kids on Glen Drive. Right now, the contractors down there said they're watching coyotes devour their prey all day long. That's right in the middle of our neighborhood. You bring chickens in, and let alone what's the #1 dog here? Golden retrievers and labs. What are they going to go for? Your neighbor's chickens. So chickens do not make good neighbors. You also tonight did not discuss about the condensed and the smaller lots for the replanting that you can literally split, you know, smaller and smaller. This is just condensed stacked housing that people can do, high density housing. Many of us for generations and families have worked hard
paid taxes to get where we are in the houses that we want. We don't want a 800 square foot tattoo ADUs and all of this in our neighborhoods that will involve being put on the wayfinding signs or on a QR code. And then these people are coming through our neighborhoods and you say it's community. If we want community, we'll go a few blocks downtown. We kind of like privacy and we like our own yards, our own, to keep our neighborhood safe without the public being dragged down there. The 15-minute city, just look it up everywhere. Liverpool right now is ruining the day. And Bill, I walked from your house just yesterday and in 11 minutes and 23 seconds. How did you get here tonight? I'm just curious. Did you walk or, you know, that's less than 15 minutes. Harbor Springs is 1.3 square miles in total, and we have a 4-block city business. And oh, also by putting these ADUs in, all these people who are working so hard on Main Street and the restaurants, you are pulling, open a coffee shop next door to me, open this, open that. You're taking these people there, you are taking the livelihood and the money and the food right out of their businesses and their children's mouths. Everybody's trying to survive here and they pay dearly into that DDA. So anyway, there was a lot more to this, people, and I'll just say real quickly about regarding the redevelopment ready. Let me see your former,
We got about 10 seconds.
okay, never mind. I'll get to you. I'll get to you in front of city council because I will bring up you guys about the RRC. That will be the demise of Harbor Springs.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bill Harmon, 548 Harrison Street. Good points, thank you. First off, simplifying the zones, I think it's a great idea. Chicken's a bad idea. I think we're all blessed that we have pretty good property values in this town. I think a lot of these things are going to reduce those property values. The increased density, ACUs, the flag lots, the increased duplex tri-levels in the residential area. Also, not too concerned about the looks of the duplex and tri-level. Most of the problems are in the upkeep and appearance of those buildings. I'm regarding ACUs, I'm 70 years old and I walk a lot. I walk to the IGA, I walk Harvard Car Care, I walk downtown. Every other day I walk a couple miles. I can get anywhere I need to get. I don't need a business right next to me or chicken coops. Also, right now regarding the businesses, you're only allowed 2 garage sales a year in town. You're gonna have one every day at a lot of these places, or run into those kind of problems with people parking, signs, everything else. Think about that. That's all I've got right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, well, some people, I want to tell you something else about comments. Some people have already done this. You can just say, I agree with what Phil just said. And you'll be counted. Yes?
Just the words right out of my mouth.
Okay.
I was going to agree.
Could you introduce yourself?
Oh, Wendy Reed, 539 East Brookside. I 100% agree with what Mr. Ironside and Mr. Harmon said.
Yeah.
I don't think you can possibly write a code that's going to encompass every business opportunity that anyone can think of, and they will think of some really wacky ones. Regarding the accessory commercial units, I think most of you clicked back on it. Did I see on there that you are restricting building materials? So are we leading into that for residential properties as well? For our residential properties? And you didn't mention what the setback requirements are going to be and what the height restrictions are going to be. And definitely on the no ditch side, I grew up on a farm.
On the which, no chickens?
Chickens.
I recorded your vote on that.
Yeah, if we have a higher average age in this area, it's because we're an extensive community. And our surrounding communities, we don't want to lower our property values. We don't want higher density that lowers our property values. We don't need to be a larger community. Thank you. You guys have done a nice body work.
Thank you for those comments. So we didn't pass out this table, which has a lot more details, for instance, about the recommended lot sizes and about some of the other things people just mentioned. I apologize for that. And we'll do that right now.
Can you put a question down on flag lots? What prohibits somebody from buying a lot and then making, doing the flag lot and their own property at the same time, their own home? Just buy up and get two of them on there right away. That goes back to the density issue. Small flag.
Victor, if people online are wondering about this table, where can they find that? On the city website?
It's homepage,
On the homepage? Okay.
zoning update.
I am Wayne Davis, so it's 466 4th Street. I've been there since 1989. My concern and questioning is with all these micro businesses that get about, we have one street, one-way parking on our street, not available at night. And where does people get in park? How are we gonna manage that? If somebody opens a tea house and down the road, there's a vacant lot, you put a tea house in there and you don't have off-street parking, where's everybody gonna go?
Thank you, Cal. All right, is it time to go to Zoom?
I'll ask if there's anyone else left here.
Yeah, we can actually come back. Oh, Mr. Graham.
How come,
Introduce yourself, please.
Tom Graham, 187 East Harbor Spring. How come for general purposes, you don't include a conservancy property in this community?
We thought we did.
So you didn't on your map, okay,
Okay,
for example.
gotcha. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Ann O'Brien, 565 East Main Street. I wanted to, thank you, the simplified, map. I think that made sense. I like that the trend is trying to go with less, simplifying the rules and not having more rules put in on our personal property. And I thought the presentation, I didn't really understand, what all the hubbub was out and, now that I see the presentation, I'm grasping what you guys have been working on, and I appreciate all the hard work and thought that you put into it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, why don't we go?
One question, Elizabeth Newbury, I live outside of the city in Pennsylvania. But I saw the word hotel in your ACUs. Does that constitute a short-term rental?
Yes.
Because you have people coming into a hotel for a weekend or a week. And will they need a special license to do something like that?
I think we can answer that right now. I don't believe that hotel was
It
on
was
the
on
list
there.
of,
It was on there.
for an ACU.
Yes.
ADU.
ADU. Yes, one of the.
Or no, the commercial.
Yeah, it was a
We'll
hotel.
get to that.
Okay, okay, thank you. Question taken, we can solve that right away. Okay, let's go to Zoom then.
Andrew?
Thank you. First off, I'd like to say I agree with Phil. And I also, forgive me, but the feed is choppy. I agree totally with Miss Baronside. I might be mispronouncing your name, so forgive me. I'd like to say that one of the reasons I chose to live in Harbor Springs was 130 West Bluff Drive. I come up into town, I park my car, and I don't touch it for sometimes a week at a time. It is a completely livable and walkable community. I walk to the IGA, I walk downtown, I walk to the marina, I walk to City Hall. And I don't like to walk, but it's not a far walk. And it's a very easy city to live in. I don't understand why we are modeling our design or master plan off of some very, very large cities. I don't think it's apples and apples. And I do appreciate the simplification of the zoning or the zoning district and the zoning map. I do have one question or one thing I'd like to point out. It was unable to read on the first current zoning map. One of the areas was notated in green, And then when you switched over to the modern version of the zoning map, everything that was green went to a community designation, except for the very small section in front of my house that you then took out of green and then put into residential. I'm concerned about that because if you were going to be consistent, everything that was one color should then go to the new color. But I saw how someone slipped that in there. It's a bit concerning to me because the question I would have is if green was designated as some community thing and that was in front of my house, now it's residential, that's actually a zoning change, not just not a uniform change of the designations. Other than that, very nice presentation. It was difficult to see the slides on Zoom. I'd recommend some way of enlarging them. I couldn't seem to do it. I tried to enlarge my screen, but I do thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I thank you for your services here.
Thank you very much.
Scott Heston.
Scott Heston, 684 West Bluff Drive. Thanks to the commission for this opportunity to speak on this issue. I appreciate Victor's update that the commission posted that attempts to address our concerns about the removal of the right to farm in Harbor Springs. I'm glad we're all being open-minded about this and looking for a solution that helps everyone and protects our rights. I'm worried that in the proposed zoning code, the commission has chosen a one-size-fits-all solution. That is that collapsing of all of those zoning districts. In the last meeting, I pointed out the incredible importance of the right to farm for the future of any small community. And I think in an attempt to acknowledge that importance, the commission worked on a patch that would try to encompass these rights in a new overlay zone. Thank you for working on this. I appreciate your efforts. I do think they are misdirected. This untested and as of yet unwritten zoning overlay has no body of case law supporting it, and I think that could open the city up to legal risk. The Michigan Right to Farm Act, Section 4, Paragraph 6, states, and I apologize for reading, quote, "It is the express legislative intent of this act preempting any local ordinance, regulation, or resolution that purports to extend or revise in any manner the provisions of this act or generally accepted agricultural management practices developed under this act. Except as otherwise provided in this section, a local unit of government shall not enact, maintain, or enforce any ordinance, regulation, or resolution that conflicts in any manner with this act or generally accepted agricultural and management practices under this act." End quote. Yeah, so this law would interdict a lot of the changes to existing agriculture that this one-size-fits-all zoning code tries to make, and the results of that would have to be litigated. So what I'm saying is that the commission has a much simpler, extensively tested, and already written solution to this problem, and that is to leave the AR zoning district alone. Don't fix what isn't broken. It only affects a small number of parcels on the outskirts of town whose very existence shows that the city is looking to meet the needs of all of its citizens. I think it's about 2 pages in the code. By leaving this zone, the city and the farmers would know exactly what is and isn't permitted, and the city would neatly sidestep any conflict with the Michigan Right to Farm Act. I don't think I have time to go into the goals of the master plan that having AR meets, but making farming into a bureaucratic process, it's not forward thinking. It introduces uncertainty into an already difficult profession, and it opens the city to a greater legal risk and cost. And I think this is the opposite of what the Planning Commission is trying to do in their good work to update the ordinance.
Yep. Scott, we got to wrap up.
You should continue to allow agriculture by special permit in the new RN zone, but please return the AR zoning district to the code before sending it up to the city council. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Ryan Lowry.
Yeah, this is actually Adam Lowry at 155 Traverse Street. Firstly, thank you for all of your work on this and for taking my comment. I just wanted to register an objection to the inclusion of ACUs into the residential zoning situation here, really just for 2 reasons. You know, in your intro, with your goals, with the master plan and such, you talked about maintaining the consistency and of the character and quality of our neighborhoods. I think including ACUs in our residential areas is counter to that. And then secondly, I think while I appreciate very much the desires of these goals to address the aging population in Harbor Springs, my family and I happen to be in the 50% demographic that are not in the over 65 place, and the appreciation, the maintenance and appreciation of our property value is very important to our financial well-being. And I think that ACUs is very much a detriment to that by bringing commercial operations into residential neighborhoods. So thank you for allowing my comment.
Thanks very much.
Maureen Kenny?
Maureen.
Hi there. I just wanted to, this is Maureen Kenny, taxpayer for 35 years at 134 West Bay Street. I just want to refer to our own city bylaws. That would be Article 5, Section 11. And just to refresh everybody's memory, it says in public hearings, commission response to public remarks shall be confined to clarification of the present facts. So I know you guys at the beginning of public comment said you will get to them and you will answer them as you can, but I think it's very, very important that some points are clarified and not at your discretion. There's a lot of concerned citizens about this. You've heard a lot of public comment already, and there's more to come. My point of clarification, it seems like that these proposed changes are obviously to make us RRC ready. Could you please clarify how much money will be coming into the city from both the state and federal level? Thank you.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Frank Rain?
Hello, Frank. Come in, Frank. All right, let's come back to Frank.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Loud and clear.
All right. Bill, I applaud your effort and all the hard work you all have put into this process. And let me cut to the chase from my perspective. I believe that the fundamental problem is that smaller home sites, multiple family dwellings, things like flag lots, neighborhood commercial enterprises will detract from the character of Harbor Springs and negatively impact home values. I'm told that there was a survey conducted by the city to ascertain the need for these types of changes. The concern there is that the survey went to people who reside in Harbor Springs, either homesteaded or not homesteaded, seasonal or year-round residents. Because obviously, if somebody got a hold of this survey in Atlanta and they were living in a very modest home site on a small lot, they would love to be able to input the city government of Harbor Springs to state a case for more affordable housing there. I also want to state, Bill, my belief that property owners in Harbor Springs will not make available home sites to accommodate smaller multiple family residents. And evidence of this we've discussed before is the small empty lot next to our home on Summit Street, which for a period of about 3 years was on the market for $239,000. Same is true in the property on the other side of our home state, owned by Jack Trumbull. It's a former gravel pit, which he listed for $449,000. I don't think property owners on the remaining sites available in Harbor Springs are going to be conducive to selling it for the erection of a small duplex or quadruplex or whatever. Quickly, I'll mention the chicken thing. I can't think of anything that's more out of character in the resort village of Harbor Springs, Michigan. And I say this not in jest so much, but if chickens are going to be permitted, why not pigs or goats? And if this recommendation were to be implemented, does the city envision hiring somebody to keep tabs on residential livestock? I don't think it's appropriate or workable. One last thing in the material that we looked at characterized as summary of key topics was a reference. Yeah, was a reference to a zoning administrative board. I think that's a bad idea. It's more government, not less. And also, I'll go back to what was said previously by other people.
You're over
Okay.
3 minutes, sorry.
Okay, well.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Talk to you soon.
John Fox.
Yeah, hi, again, John Fox, 309 Pine Street. Appreciate again taking on these challenging topics and trying to work together for solutions. I agree with many of the comments today on low density. You know, I'm not sure where the ADU thing falls, but the reality is you have to even look deeper. Does the city have resources from water, power, and so on? Are ADUs, are they supposed to be on a foundation or are they mobile? There's many things that I think we would need to look at there. On the ACUs, I'm sorry, I forget the name of who spoke about it, but from a local business perspective, I would be totally frustrated if in fact you allowed this. Let alone I do not agree with ACUs in the neighborhoods for all the reasons mentioned. But the impact that it would have on the businesses and the time they truly have to make the revenue to support them on a 12-month calendar. Agree with the chickens. And my final comment is the 15-minute city, sure, we can walk it. But the reality is when they talk about those, they talk about walking, biking, or public transportation. So we're only talking about walking in this scenario. So again, I think that that is a moot point. We shouldn't talk about a 15-minute city. But again, thank you for those comment or the opportunity to comment.
Likewise, thank you very much.
All right, we have Patrick Kenny.
Hello, Patrick.
Yes, and I've tried to start my video as well, but the host has to allow you to do that. I wanted to be sure to face you as I spoke because my comments are probably perhaps strong. First of all, I'm a property owner of 134 Bay Street, which my wife Maureen and I have owned since 1987. That's 37 years. We've been paying taxes, and I want to draw you to your own bylaws, Article 5, Section 11, which requires you to answer the questions that are posed to you. And I want to point out the fact that you did not answer the question that my wife asked as it related to the beneficiary payments that you anticipate to receive as a result of following these rules from the state and from federal government. That somehow was overlooked, and yet you are required to answer that. More importantly, from my perspective, I want to point you to Article 5, Section 7. I ask you on the committee, particularly Chairman Mulder, to review the conflict of interest that is stated in that section. I note that it is clear that there is activity that is planned should these planning codes be changed. I know that ex officio Councilwoman Rondell has made petitions to the Planning Commission on her behalf to qualify for this flag zone in the side cut, the cut driveway that she has petitioned for and was ultimately paid for by the city. I think that architect Mark Boudet, who sits on the committee, should explain how his conflict of interest may also participate in the development and the structural planning of these housing units. So I would suggest that there be strong consideration of a review of your bylaws in reflect of the conflict of interest that you have. And though I'm not asking you to respond because you already did not respond to my wife's comment and her question. So I'm not going to ask you to respond to mine. But I fully expect that we're going to see, should these planning zoning commission.
I think that's 3 minutes.
Yep, I expected I'd be cut off.
That's the time limit. Yeah, okay. Victor, can we get a ruling on Mr. Kenny's interpretation of
The planning commission is not required to respond to questions. The bylaws state that planning commission's comments, if they do choose, shall be confined to responding, clarifying points. So there's nothing in the bylaws saying that you must respond to anyone's comments. It's just if you do respond to comments, it has to be confined to clarification. It's just, they misread the bylaws.
So, yeah, all right. Well, good. I think there should be some response to that last comment. Just accuse 2 people on this board of character assassination. That's BS. I get rich. All right, let's,
We do have one more on.
yeah, let's keep going. I'm gonna think on that one a little bit. All right, thank you, Patrick. And we have somebody else?
Allison Larson.
Allison, hello, Allison.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Perfect.
Yes. I would just like to bring up the fact that in the presentation, it was stated that there are not elder and assisted living facilities in our area. In the city of Harbor Springs, or right outside of the city limits, we have Bay Bluffs, Pine View Cottage, Perry Village, and the Friendship Center. So those are 4 facilities right within walking distance of downtown, and numerous other facilities in the Petoskey region. So I would just like to bring that fact to everyone's attention. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Allison.
We have Rob Debate.
Hello, Rob.
Hello, thank you for having me. Thank you for all the work that you're all doing. I'd like to just disclose that my wife, Emily, is on the Planning Commission, and usually we agree, but not all the time. I'm opposed to the ACU used as businesses. I greatly respect our downtown merchants, and I'm in favor of supporting them. Case in point, I heard somebody today mention a yoga studio. There's one being, there's an investment being made downtown in a yoga studio by the post office. And I'm just curious why we'd want to give a leg up to a different yoga studio that might want to open in one of the neighborhoods, Say Lake at Main or Zoll. And I don't think that's fair to the downtown merchants. I have great experience walking in Harbor Springs. It's a very walkable city. I'm actually confused why some of the council members feel this is not the case. I walk everywhere very easily within 15 minutes. I also appreciate the council wanting to accommodate some who feel chickens is something that's needed in our community. I don't understand why you're considering adding this, though. It's important. I'd like to also add to remember that non-full-time residents are an important part of our community, and I feel strongly that they should be considered as we make these changes. Finally, I'd just like to share that we are a wonderful community, in my opinion, and I think you all feel the same way. And I would encourage you to place your focus on our community and not comparing ourselves to other communities such as Ann Arbor and many others. We are unique, we are extremely walkable, and let's embrace who we are and how special this place is. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Rob.
James Kenny.
James Kenny. Great.
Hi, yes, James Kenny, 134 West Bay Street. Again, want to reiterate section 11 that states commission response to the public's remarks shall be confined to clarification of the presented facts. Again, there's been no clarification on any of these questions that have been raised this evening. Secondly, I think someone made a comment about public character assassination. This is all fact and can be reviewed in the Planning Commission's meeting notes. And then as far as Chairman Mulder's conflict of interest, he's listed as a leader for the Harbor Area Residential Trust. Again, lots of conflict of interest.
Thank you, James, for mentioning that. I look forward to talking about that.
So we have on Zoom.
Okay, good. All right, those were some great comments. So why don't we close the public hearing and then let's just see how well we can address some of the issues that were raised there.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure. Oh, wait, let's close the public
Close the
hearing.
public hearing. All right.
All right. how
I
about a
move
motion
to close the
about-
public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Say nay. All right, the public hearing is closed at 7:21 PM. All right, now it's for the planning commission to discuss.
I want to say something.
Okay, Bob?
For those of you who are concerned about not getting your questions answered, the chairman at the very beginning of this meeting explained that we would take your input and that we would answer your questions at the end. A number of people have made a big deal about that we're not paying attention and we're not answering your questions. We told you that we would not answer questions until the end. And now we will answer your questions and try and make sense out of this.
We're gonna try to do a really good job. Okay, planning commission members, is there anything you heard that you would like to comment, on, first of all?
I would like to make a general comment. So,
Okay.
okay. I appreciate everybody's input. I just ask that this process be more cooperative than adversarial. The document that's been prepared is not a mandate. It's not a dictate. It's not the way it's going to be. This was a document prepared for discussion. And we had some great discussion last week, and we've come up with a potential solution, specifically talking about the agricultural residential area. I know there was more discussion on that tonight, but the inclusion of accessory commercial units, the inclusion of chickens, and two of the big ones that have been discussed here today. These are, I heard many people say, you are doing this. No, this is for discussion.
It is. Okay, any other additional comments, and then maybe I could pick out some main topics and we can talk about those and answer questions and clarify things. You know, work with me and maybe if I forget something, even a little secret signal. And okay, here we go. Let's talk about the timing of this and the fact that it's February and that we're having an important meeting. We went back and looked at the history of this thing, and the discussion of the master plan started in January of 2020. And it was discussed at 18 meetings. A lot of work was done on it. It spanned, I think that would be 2 summers. And so that was a lot of work, and that was adopted by council and it's in place. The zoning discussion actually started in June of 2022. And here we are perhaps wrapping it up. And so that has spanned 2 summers as well. And that was discussed in a whole lot of meetings, 15. This is our 15th public meeting tonight on that topic of zoning. So that's pretty good. I also have 6 articles from the Harbor Light on the topic of the zoning code review. And I have 1 from the Petoskey News Review. So this has been covered in depth And, stuff has been posted on the website. We held a, public preview and a number of open houses with storyboards where people could come in. And, so I just don't know what else we could have done that would be more public and more timely. So, that's that. And time does go on, business goes on. Not, I saw a comment that said all the important people are away. So that's not true. Because the rest of us can keep things going and we have to. So anyway,
Well, I'd just like to add that we did have a comment about, people who can't make it here in person, and we started doing Zoom about 3.5, 4 years ago, and we had 58 people on Zoom tonight. So they all had the opportunity to participate. So even though you're not here, you can be part of the process every single meeting. So that hasn't been always been like that. So there's plenty of ways to participate and stay informed.
So, that's that. Great. Let's talk about the RRC and inform people about that because there are some concerns. And this is called it's a process to become a redevelopment ready city, right? Community, yeah.
One question was that I heard was how much money from federal state that we're getting from it. And the only money we have is right now is a grant to work on our zoning code. From the MEDC, Michigan Economic Development Corporation.
The RRC program, Mr. Chairman, does not provide federal and state money to any community. The RRC program dates back about 10 years ago. Its inception goes back to the Suburban Alliance that operated out of Oakland and Wayne County in response to communities that had onerous regulations that were holding up redevelopment projects. Nationally, a multifamily project or a residential subdivision project, 40% of the development cost is tied up in pre-development expenses. 5% of that is in local reviews. So what the Suburban Alliance did was they were taking a look at best practices on how communities could restructure their zoning codes and their master plans to be more favorable to the development process and to the property owners. They found that developers want two things: predictability on the process and fairness in their treatment when they present projects to the Planning Commission or City Council. The RRC program, the state thought that the Suburban Alliance model was something that should be used throughout the state. So the state of Michigan actually adopted that model and has been working with communities to simplify their codes. Some of the things that are in this ordinance that are reflective of the RRC best practices are reducing the amount of parking that's required. We all know when we go to a Walmart or we go to a Meijer or we go to a Lowe's that 50% of their parking lots are never used, but they contribute stormwater and they pollute the lake because of the residuals. So the RRC program asks communities to have a minimum and a maximum parking requirement to try to reduce the amount of parking that's required of a private property owner. It's a best practice. They ask that communities on small projects, not large, but small projects, go through administrative review rather than going before the Planning Commission and taking another 30 or 45 days in terms of the development review process. That's the best practice. They ask that communities that are walkable, and by the way, from a planning point of view, Harbor Springs has always been a 15-minute community. The larger metropolitan areas have recognized that small villages are much more adaptive and much more community oriented because people can walk to the restaurant, the coffee shop, to the library, and to City Hall. So the metropolitan areas are taking the model like Harbor Springs, and they're using it as a cookie cutter within their metropolitan areas so people have greater access to things that they enjoy during their daily life. So you're already 15-minute walkable community. So is Harbor Springs. So is Boyne City. So is Charlottesville. Okay, so it's nothing new. Actually, the metropolitan areas
are emulating what you already have. The ability to walk and ride a bike to a store and a shop. The RRC best practice was that if you are a walkable community and you that instead of requiring people to provide, said if you're a walkable, bikeable community, let people ride their bike or walk to the business and reduce the parking and give the property owner a break on the amount of asphalt that he has to lay down. It's a best practice. They did ask that communities take a look at what they refer to as their housing types. In Michigan, we have two types of housing, roughly: single family detached and apartment buildings. Very few communities have duplexes. Very few communities have triplexes. So they asked communities to take a look at if there was a need to have a duplex. That's just the best practice. So what the RRC program is really a guidebook for best practices. The other best practice the RRC program utilizes is making sure that the public is well informed, and they require the community to have a public participation plan, which this community does. That's why they use Zoom. That's why the Planning Commission had an open house last summer over a 3-day period to let people come in and talk and see what was going on with the zone. That's just a best practice. The RRC program has nothing to do with state or federal money. Being an RRC community just means that you have developed a certain best practices in local government. That's all it means. Has nothing to do with if you're certified as an RRC community, you have a pipeline to state and federal funds. It's just not there. And I can tell you with a degree of certainty, because when the state started the RRC program, I was hired as one of their technical advisors. So I have been used around the state educating communities on the RRC program. So the fallacy out there that if the community is RRC, the state and federal government's going to come in and take over, that's just totally nonsense. Okay, so let's just put that aside. The idea of the ADUs that people have talked about is nothing more than a new term for what you already have in town, and that's the guest houses. Okay, the difference is every time somebody wanted to put an apartment above their garage, they had to pay for a special land use approval, and they had to go through a public hearing. So all an ADU is what, like Bill said, there's probably over 100 of them. We do review at the Planning Commission 4 or 5 a year, where people come in and they want to put apartments above their garages. So the ADU is just another term for the guest house. But I thank you for asking me about the RRC program, because I noticed from some of the community comments here, there is a misinterpretation of what that program is.
What does RRC stand for?
Redevelopment ready. I mean, it means that you've got a zoning code that's user friendly, that if a developer or property owner comes in, they can pretty much find their way through it without having to always ask Jeff to make interpretations. That's really what it is.
So John, I think and Bill, some of the clarification when people talk about the money is that if you are in the process in RRC or are RRC certified, you can score higher on grant applications from the MEDC.
But RRC is,
they don't give you money or direct you what to do with that money. If you have a project that you want to apply for a grant for, then you just score higher on those.
The money would come from some other state agency. But
sure,
yes,
through a grant. Through a grant.
And only if we wanted it for that project.
And if I could add, my experience in going through the RRC certification process, almost everything that I've been involved in, zoning related or planning related or anything, it's all been about making things more open based and available to the community. Putting more of our applications and our application processes online, putting together documents and information to make things available to the community so that more things are open, less things are presumed to be hidden behind closed doors.
I think some of the things that we've done for the RRC since we started this process was, as John, you mentioned, public participation plan. We created a recruitment process for board members. We created a board's expectations plan. We've held joint meetings. We have a plan for board orientation. We've consolidated our fee schedule, and we have a working on board training. So those are some of the things, and I know Vanessa, you're also on that committee. A lot of the things we already had in our options. And John, you mentioned something about duplexes too, and duplexes were already in our zoning code previously.
Yeah.
It's just, what we're doing now is rearranging, basically, what districts we want to see different uses based on our master plan. So
Good. Let's go back to that again, because that has been one of the concerns that people have, is that we're doing this to achieve RRC certification. And your reading of it is, in terms of zoning, we were already there.
remote, yeah, we are there. There's things. So for example, housing variety, RC wants you have a variety of housing options, and they give you like, there's best practices, there's like a list of 10 different types of housing options that you can have, and we have several of those in the city already. And there's also, and if those housing options don't meet your community's needs, doesn't mean you don't get RC certified. You just, you relay that back to the RC saying, hey, we looked into these different housing options and they're not right for our community, but we have proposed these other things that we think are better fit. So there's not one, requirement that you have one specific type of housing in order to get the certification.
Right. Great. Okay. Mr. Sheldon asked how much benefit the city will get from creating a certain zoning district.
Sure, I'm not sure if that.
That was more about the,
RRC.
yeah.
The RRC.
Yeah.
So the RRC is not a specific district, it's just a certification.
No, I didn't realize.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts on RRC? All right.
John touched on ADUs or guest quarters, and if I could expand on that and kind of lead into, there was another question from the public about administrative approval versus special land use approval. We talked about that, John mentioned we get 3 or 4 guest quarter requests every year. Part of the reason that we've talked about moving that to administrative approval is because at those meetings where we have the planning commission discuss those and we get feedback from the public has been very pro guest quarters. There have been very minimal concerns or complaints regarding them and their use. And that's one of the reasons that we talked about removing the special land use requirement for guest quarters and changing that. There was a question at the previous public hearing about the confusion of talking about relieving some of the administrative oversight of the planning commission, but now we're also talking about adding special land uses for other functions, and that seemed odd. It's because we're talking about adding some things new for discussion and approvals, but making sure that we have a proper process for approval for them so that the public can weigh in on these new ideas. So I think that's a good example of why we're taking some things that used to be special land use and making them by right uses, because the public has been very pro them, but then having special land uses added for other functions.
Some of the new ideas.
If that helps to explain that administrative versus SLU.
And Frank Rain said that he was under the impression the administrative review committee was an extra layer that's new. Can you address that?
I think that it's gonna do 2 things. It's going to take some functions that were planning commission related functions, and it's going to expedite that process for an applicant. Previously, under the old code, the applicant would have to submit their plan. They might have a pre-interview with me where we would discuss what process they would have to go through. There would be a substantial fee to come to the planning commission for that, to cover the cost of the notice of paper, the review by planning consultant, and also a time issue of waiting up to 30 to 60 days for the next meeting of the planning commission where they would be able to have that discussion heard. So removing some of those fee requirements, removing that time requirement, and having it be done at a committee level administratively can expedite that process for an applicant for things that are maybe not necessarily something that the whole planning commission feels needs to be discussed.
Okay, so our intent is to make it less
burdensome on the
government.
property owner. Yeah,
Okay.
there is still the option for the property owner to say, no, I would like this to go to the planning commission if they feel that they want to.
Okay.
Jeff, one thing I heard in that conversation was that by taking it out of the planning commission's hands, putting it into administrative review committee, that would negate the requirement for notification to neighbors. Is that the case or not?
It's do not get noticed.
Yeah, when it's not something that requires a public hearing, we would not be notifying property owners. But we're only proposing to do that on topics of discussion where when we have those public discussions, the public has almost always been completely for a topic. If there have been issues that were of more concern where the public had, no, we want to have some discussion on this, we have not proposed to make that change for those topics.
And there is a trigger, is that if the use is permitted by right, they can go directly to the administrative review. If the proposed use is less than 5,000 square feet, they can go to administrative review. But if somebody comes in with a project that's over 5,000 square feet or a special land use, it's got to go to the planning commission. So there is a trigger that if the project is large, it does have to go to the PC for review. And if it's a special land use, it automatically goes to the planning commission for public hearing and notification to the public.
Okay. Mr. Hart, talk to us about government in California making people house homeless people on their property somehow. And could we research that? That's pretty alarming.
I'll take a look at
yeah. Okay, and Mr. Hart, if you got some documentation on that, I'd love to learn about it. Sounds crazy, but I'm willing to learn, so. Let's see.
Somebody else had a comment about architectural style of accessory
good.
structures.
Good.
That is something that we had in our previous code, that if you are proposing to build an accessory building that would have guest quarters or something like that in there, we already have a trigger that would require it to be of a similar architectural style to the principal structure. And we, I believe, have that in the new code as well.
It's in the new code.
Yeah.
John, someone had a question about that, to recap the agricultural overlay district, because they kind of missed that conversation. So if you could just kind of go over that.
Yeah, at the last public hearing last week, there was some concern from property owners that are in the AR district, which is at the extreme west end of the city. The ordinance is going from AR to residential neighborhood, and they were concerned that they were giving up some of their rights if they so desire to use their property for some form of farming. So based on that, the zoning committee, their intent was that we really didn't want to take away anybody's right to do anything in that district. We had it as a special land use, but then the committee decided to use what is known as an overlay. And the agricultural overlays on top of that area of town, and says that if anybody has property that's in that overlay, then they can do a certain number of agricultural related uses that the chairman went through. They could do a vineyard, orchards. They could do what's called market gardening, which is vegetables that somebody would plant and harvest for a farmer's market, beekeeping, greenhouse. There was a number knows that you already have a bluff restriction overlay. So they have been used in the city, and we're just adding a new one, which is called the agricultural.
All right, and then I want to come back to a question from Ms. Reed. She wondered if you're going to start requiring or specifying architectural materials for homes.
That was some language that we added, and I think that came from the discussion that I brought up regarding whether or not the city of Harbor Springs was ready to start accepting alternative style building materials. We're starting to see some other communities are allowing shipping container homes. And we brought that up as for discussion. And I think the idea was that we didn't think the city of Harbor Springs was ready for something like that. And that was kind of the reason that we brought in some restriction on building materials. If that answers the question that was brought up, or if they would like to see shipping container homes, we can take that out.
I'm just wondering if you're going to use that to broaden out into paint colors.
No, thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you for asking that. So, yeah, that's, in associations, I mean, they may tell you paint colors, they may tell you your curtains, they may tell you what your mailbox has to be. That's exactly what we're trying to get away from. So, thank you. Let's see. Tom, Graham asked about the Conservancy property. Was it on the map, Tom?
And so on the map, it's shown as residential because it's what it was previously, so we just didn't change it to community. It's owned by the Conservancy, so we can put it as a community property.
Okay. Thank you for that.
On that same topic, there was a comment that somebody else made about a property that was in front of them that used to be. That's property that previously the city thought that they owned, and through discussion, we determined that we didn't own it in this private residential property. That's why it was removed from the community district and put in with the rest of the residential properties.
All right. There was a question about hotel use in one district.
I think it's in the RM.
That's in the RM district. I think when we were going through the slides, they may have.
So it has
we
nothing.
can relook at that slide, but I don't think that's the case.
Residential can have.
And those would be uses that were on ACUs. There's
no.
Yeah. If you go.
What's that?
It was on a split, there was a.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, that's.
That was our.
There it is.
Hotel, special land. Yeah, that's commercial uses.
That's commercial.
That's in RM.
The residential multi district, which are allowed currently.
On the topic of districts, another question that was asked was what zoning districts would ADUs be permitted in? And that's for residential zoning districts, correct?
And B1.
And
right? And B1.
Another comment that I thought to comment on or mention regarding chickens. If depending on the conversation, but there were some comments and questions about that there didn't seem to be a lot of language in our zoning code regarding chickens and how they could be kept. I think part of why we limited the language in the zoning code is we also have language in the city code regarding in our nuisance section. And we have a lot of language there regarding chickens and how they can be kept and things like that. So.
Allison Larson asked or said that I said there are no elder care resources available. And if I said that, I did not mean that. What I meant to say, probably did, is that elder care resources are going to be hard to come by, hard to get, and increasingly so. So that was my intent on that. Let's see, Rob brought up using the word affordable. Did I use it or use it? Oh, affordable. For
There's
what?
no affordable care.
Oh, for elder care, yeah, it is very expensive. Rob, debate made a good comment against ACUs and how they could conflict with existing merchants. And, my thought on that is, we're definitely sensitive to that. And should the city be picking winners and losers for this international? Or should we just be offering opportunities for people to run a business and let the market work things out?
Most of these uses under ACUs, most of them are already taking place as home occupations and homes. I think on this list, we have a few that have probably expanded, which include coffee shop, yoga studio, perhaps, maybe some people, but there's an alternative to that discussion, just to think about it, is that maybe someone who wants to operate a yoga studio out of their house, they can't because they're not allowed to, and that's why they come to a downtown area and spend more money on something like that. So there's more than one way to look at it.
So Rob, I definitely take your point.
Can I
Still thinking
Is
about
there
it.
any chance to elaborate?
Pardon me?
It's just elaboration on a point.
Sure.
I think there are 4 or 5 or maybe more soon to be empty storefronts in downtown. And I would hope that the city would focus on how do we get those filled up as compared to maybe a free for all in the residential area.
Good. Got it. All right. Oh,
The issue downtown is the price of a rental. That just totally prohibits any small time.
Well, it's
So that and employees.
Another comment that I've had with people that I've talked to on the phone is there are a lot of people in the community that just don't like to come downtown because it's so busy and so packed. And that having another option that helps them avoid that has been something they look forward to.
Marinda brought up the issue of lot size. So that it is a really big part of this thing. And what it has to do with is we said that the smallest lot size in this new plan would be 52 feet wide. 132. By 132.
Which mirrors. That mirrors a platted subdivision that we have in town.
Yes. So can you point that out to us?
Yep,
Can you pull
it's the Southern and Crandall's edition, which would be 4th Street, 3rd Street, and the north side of 2nd Street. Well, I think the north side of 2nd Street is a condominium project that has a lot size similar with it, but that platted subdivision is the lots in that area are 52.8 feet wide.
Victor, can you point at that? Or you are?
Sorry.
On Zoom, you can see
Right
it.
here.
Right there.
So is that like West 3rd Street and West
It's
4th Street?
west of State Street, east of and.
Yeah.
30.
And how many are there, would you
There's
say?
probably,
I think there's 56 or so.
There's around 90, so you guys just litigated it with the state of Michigan.
We didn't, the state of
Yeah, the state of
Michigan,
Michigan,
yeah, I think there's 90 some lots.
Yeah.
Some of them are combined where somebody owns 2 lots. There's 56 separate, I think, property owners within that area. It's about.
Yep. So that was the thinking on how to set the new lot size, was to mirror the ones that we already have. And, if you may feel those look great, you may feel they're too tight, but that's what we thought a decent minimum size could be.
And a home can be 500 square feet minimum, correct? So your home can be smaller than the ADU that you might be able to fit on the property.
No, that's not true.
No, it's not.
So-
What's the minimum?
We did decrease the minimum size for a dwelling for a single family home. The previous minimum was, I think, 896. And we have proposed to reduce that to 560, which I believe is the minimum that the county has for the building department, if I recall. An accessory building cannot be larger than the principal building. So whatever the size of your principal building is, the way that the language in the code reads, I believe you can have up to 2 accessory buildings and the total square footage of all of your accessory buildings cannot exceed 75% of your principal building. We have one caveat to that you're always permitted an accessory building of at least 576 square feet, which is roughly 24 by 24 or a 2-car garage.
So I was off by 60 feet, but anyway, how many people can buy, so how many people can live in 560 square feet? Raise your one?
It's up to you.
Okay, so you could really pack a bunch of houses in small lots and people.
Yeah.
And ADU.
Yep. So,
Looking better and better.
so people are, thanks, so people are concerned about small lot size. Here we have 40 or 50 lots that are already that size. And you can decide if that feels good to you or if it doesn't feel good to you, but we thought that was a decent, smallest size to pick.
The other thing that we have is the lot coverage is the same for all the numbers of accessory buildings and principal buildings that you have on your property. So you can't exceed the lot coverage number 2. So that's, again, that's another reduction in the scale of what we're talking about doing. There are a lot more uses for people on their property, but there are caps. You know, there are limitations on what you can do.
Could I get some clarification on the agricultural property? Seems like up on Arbor Street and then old map.
Yep.
Where the larger lots are, those are very big lots up there. But that was zoned for agricultural, and now it's not.
On Arbor Street.
Yeah.
That's right.
Aren't they losing an awful lot of usable property there?
Nobody's gonna use any.
If
Nobody's
they
gonna use
want
that property.
to use it for agricultural purposes.
You guys wanna hit that one?
You know, nobody's telling people that they have to split their lots into smaller pieces. And we're also not telling people that if, you know, in that district going from ag to residential, that they can't have personal farming activity there. You know, we don't want to conflict with the Right to Farm Act. The only way that that would impact that neighborhood is if somebody in that neighborhood wanted to do some commercial level farming, then we would require them to come to the planning commission for special land use, which they previously would not have to do. So that's one level of, I guess, more oversight than what we previously had. But I don't think we have any actual farming activity going on there.
We don't have any commercial.
on that street?
We don't have any commercial. in the art.
Maybe, I think so. I'm glad that that area is, I'm glad that area is brought up though, because
There's one thing that's a little confusing between the old zoning map. The existing zoning map is not showing updated property boundaries where you're updating your proposed one is showing the updated property boundaries. Because I know my lot on the existing map does not show a couple of the boundaries around me existing that I know are, because our lot was subdivided out before we bought it. And I think that's where some of the confusion is coming in. So the existing property boundaries are the ones that are showing on your proposed map. They're not represented on on what's existing code.
yeah. And that is something that you see that we have corrected in our new map here. But I do want to just quickly make a note. If you look at Ottawa Street, I love this example because we talk about reducing the number of zoning districts that we have. Ottawa Street is a short dead end street and there's, I think, maybe 25 or so homes on that street. There's 4 different zoning districts that apply to that street. So depending on where you're located, you have, you know, you might have very different regulations and requirements compared to what your neighbor has. And so combining some of our districts helps to alleviate that, where one property owner can do something, but the property right next to them can't.
Okay. Members, can you think of anything else that we want to address?
The parking for the commercial overlays.
The commercial overlays, thank you.
What commercial?
Or commercial AC.
Whatever you call it.
We're not,
There is no, the parking was exempt.
pardon me?
Oh, parking was exempt
There was no parking.
for the ACs.
Right.
ECUs?
Yes.
My question was, if you open a tea house on there, You have 6 cars parking, trying to park on 4th Street, it's not gonna work.
Okay. Got it.
So how do you address that?
I think the way that that would be addressed is that property that wants to put in a tea house would have to come to the planning commission with their special land use request. And with that special land use request, we have a list of criteria or standards that that applicant would have to meet and show that they can comply with to make sure that they're mitigating any negative impact on neighboring properties. And we would address parking as part of that application. So where we might not have a set standard that applies to all of them, we would look at each individual application individually and determine what works for that site. And I believe that one of the standards is relating to parking, making sure that we're not, I know in our existing code, one of our standards directly, I think it's number 2, addresses making sure that we're not inadvertently affecting pedestrian or vehicular traffic. And that's where parking would come into play. So I believe, and we can verify that in the new code, that it's
Okay, let's see, great.
I'll comment about enforcement, but we're getting more.
Oh, great.
Too. Tom mentioned that.
I don't think so. Most of the things that we're doing are things that we're already enforcing anyway. It just seems like some of the processes are changing a little bit. I don't think it's in a direction that's creating more enforcement. The only difference that we really have is we're adding that new criteria where right now we have administrative approval by myself, where we have planning commission approval. We're adding that middle category, which would be an administrative committee approval.
But that doesn't work for special land use, right?
Correct. Special
So
land
that
use
has
is
to
planning.
come. So ACUs would have to come to planning commission as a whole.
All ACUs.
Yeah, because they all require a special land use.
And will they be required building code? Meet building code?
Oh, yeah, we don't have it,
ADA?
we don't have any say. Yeah, they have.
All that has to be met.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see, that's the other thing about the ACUs. You can do more, but there's limitations, because if you want to open up a little cafe or something, there's ADA and building code requirements that you have to meet.
And the health.
Yeah, plumbing, I would
Yeah,
imagine.
there's
Oh, yeah,
a lot of stuff
Yeah,
that
you've got
you have to do that will greatly reduce the size of things. And also, because they aren't that big, and so you can do more, but the scale will be small.
Right. Well, I
You won't be
believe the economics will take care of a lot of it.
Absolutely.
They will.
If you're $400 a foot
Yeah.
and you're building a, 500 square, and you're $250,000 and you have.
Yeah.
Hey,
guys.
Hey, guys. Yeah, we gotta keep a single meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And, This is a little more interaction than we would normally
I
have, but.
know,
Oh,
I
go
just
ahead.
wanna understand the RRC, right? Why do you even talk about it? If it's not really, if we already are meeting the criteria, why does it keep getting mentioned?
We don't know.
You don't know? Okay, great, good.
We're already meeting the criteria for the zoning part.
Yeah,
So it's a big
Well,
thing.
this gentleman at the end, I think, Victor, you might be the city manager, said something about RRC certification. Do we have to get that for some reason?
We don't have to.
We don't have to.
Although we're council about, I think in 2019 was endeavored on the route to do it because it was gonna help us make us more transparent in our processes and allow us to create more plans, like for example, the public participation plan, like we just follow those guidelines and we're doing things to meet them. And I know some people question, you know, the motives behind it, but it's really just helping us become more transparent and getting our best practices in place. So there's no obligation to do it.
Okay.
Something also wanted to do and.
Hey, good.
We're trying to prepare for the next generation. That's it in simple words.
Yeah.
We're all gonna be gone.
Right.
We have to prepare for them. And we have to simplify, we have to keep moving forward.
I
That's
think
what
as
it's all
John
about.
Michelangelo mentioned that it was, the RC program was created during the recession time. So this is also helping us prepare for if there is a economic downturn, that we're ready to be able to attract business and keep our town healthy. And so I think it's becoming overblown, what this RC really is. But
Mr. Rain was wrong when he said this is a resort town. This is not a resort town. This is a real live, small town with real live people that live, die, play, work, go to school,
Right.
that runs every day. We can't do this just in the summer. That's what we're preparing for. We're trying to organize a community that if you live here 12 months a year, that you're part of. We're trying to get into the next century, We're trying to modernize.
Okay, let's see. I have one more thing and then one more short thing after that, and then we can talk about next steps. If that's all right. Let's see, Mark reminded me that, property values, we should talk about property values. So a lot of people's concerns revolve around the fact that implementing these things will harm property values. So we haven't found evidence of harmed property values from the main ideas in this. So Jeff, Victor, do you have any way to address this?
I guess the first point is that, you know, the planning commission considers zoning code regulations. That's not their function, is to look at, you know, property values or anything like that. You're looking at how does zoning code meet the master plan goals. But I haven't seen anything, John, I don't know, but anything that we're suggesting here could potentially harm property values.
We're not proposing restricting anybody's ability and how they can use their property. If anything, we're adding some abilities that weren't previously there. Property values are going to be determined on, I think, two factors. One is the highest and best use of the property, and how somebody chooses to use their property is going to dictate what the value of that property is. And people will more than likely choose to use their property in whatever provides them the most value. So I think that it's pretty unlikely that any changes that we're making here are going to negatively affect values, because we're not restricting any rights that they currently have. That's just my opinion. You know, just as the assessor for the city of Harbor Springs, but I'm sure there are differing opinions out there too.
That's got to be one of the biggest concerns. Definitely. Sure, let's talk. Mindy.
On page 2, building heights in CBD redefine maximum building heights for rooftop equipment. You don't say what it is now and what you're going to do to.
In that table?
Is the current maximum building height?
We're thinking,
The current maximum height for portions of the CBD is 30 feet. We also have the planned development overlay district in the current code right now, which allows you to go up to, I believe it's 40 feet. There is an exception in there that allows for some equipment and I think rooftop access that can potentially add some to that. In the new code, the maximum height is 40 feet, including any rooftop access like elevator enclosures, things like that.
So that would be a 4-story apartment building? That would be a 4-story apartment building?
No, we specifically also state 2 stories if you're gonna then have rooftop access, or 3 stories if you're not gonna have rooftop access.
And the side yard or the front yard setback is 15 feet. I thought it was 25. Where?
The front yard setbacks, well, really, the front side and rear yard setbacks change depending on what zoning district you are in.
It says 8 feet, and I think that's what it is currently, the side yard.
8 feet.
I'm sorry, it says 15 feet, I thought it was 25. And then you're allowing a porch, a non-enclosed porch, to extend 7 feet further.
Right. Front yard setbacks, I would say that a large percentage, I don't have the exact number, but a large percentage of properties in the city of Silver Springs are already non-compliant with their existing front yard setback. It ranges depending on what zoning district you're in. I think the smallest we have is 20. Some are 20. There may be some that are 30. I'm not positive on that. But that's something that has been a typical request at the zoning board of appeals, is my home is already non-compliant with that front yard setback. A lot of the other homes are even closer to the street than I am. I would like to be able to have the front face of my house mirror what my neighbors have. So what we've done for front yard setbacks is we've modified that to say that we're going to look at the average setback that your existing neighbors have. And we're going to use that to help set what your setback is, so that we can better allow property owners to have the face of their home mirror what their neighbors have in the area that they are.
So
We've specified the 15 feet for, let's say that you're on a street or a block where that average has not been established yet. It would be 15 feet. We've also said that we're going to base the face of that average setback on the face of the homes. And then we're going to allow porches to extend up to 7 feet in front of that.
Is that 15 feet from the sidewalk or from the street?
From the property line, wherever that property line might be. Usually that property line is going to be the inside edge of the sidewalk. It may not be that in all cases. Does that help to better explain how that's working? That is a little bit confusing compared to what we previously had. I think the idea of that was to better take into consideration what the existing conditions are of the residential homes on a given street. And to relieve some of the burden for those practical difficulty discussions at the zoning board of appeals.
Okay, we gotta wrap this up. I have one more thing, and I think it was James Kenny mentioned a nonprofit that I'm associated with. And I want to thank you, James, for checking out our website. It's I volunteer with Northern Homes Community Development Corporation, which is a nonprofit that serves 7 counties. It's involved in housing related issues, and we have a local effort here in Heber Springs to start what's called a community land trust. It's an interesting model that helps full-time people as a first home buyer perhaps move into home ownership and to make that hard jump into it. We're pretty proud of our first project, and I briefed Planning Commission about this over the last couple of years, and we're all on board and haven't detected any kind of a conflict with a nonprofit organization. And I also want to tell you, I volunteer with the Little Traverse Housing Partnership too. Housing's gotten interesting to me, and that's a group of people that are interested in housing related issues and way over Petoskey. I donate to Habitat. We go into all my nonprofit donations. Or the community foundation. I donate to the community foundation. They're involved in a lot of housing related issues. So there are my four things. Oh, and I do the Humane Society. And food bank, too. We can cover all. Cover all the, here it is. Yeah, thanks for asking about that, James. I appreciate it. And we can talk about the other stuff too. So, all right. Planning Commission members, should we talk about next steps and wrap this up? Right, okay. What are you inclined to do? We have a couple options. One is we could decide to do something tonight. We could vote on what's been implemented or not vote on. We could schedule another meeting to take into account the comments that we've heard tonight. To see if we want to make any changes to that.
I would suggest we have another meeting to review this one more time, because some good comments were made. I think, you know, we can sharpen our pencils a little bit. You know, get locked in a little bit better. I'm all for another meeting.
Yeah.
I agree with you, another meeting, but I agree with you. I think, you know, we heard a lot of different things tonight that we certainly want to consider. And I think planning themselves needs to talk, you know, some more about some of it. So I would suggest that we have a special meeting next week if we can do it, so that we can make this happen while it's all fresh in our minds and heard all this.
And you think a week is enough for us to incorporate any changes we want to make in the documents? All right.
I would like to say, I think we should definitely have another meeting, if not two.
Okay.
I think next week is quick. I'm gonna be out of town next week and I would definitely love to participate. So there's a lot to discuss. I feel there's no rush. And just really put, all the comments that we've heard, to good use and what we feel as a committee to good use and go from there.
I would like to keep the energy rolling. You know, so I think a meeting next week would be appropriate.
You want a motion?
I just want thoughts.
I agree, meeting.
I think we also need to wrap this up soon because it has been going 2.5+ years.
Yeah.
And we need to kind of finalize. It's nice to get the input from the public and now do what we need to with that input and just do what we need to do.
Rick, any thoughts?
Well, we do have a lot to discuss in the next committee meeting, and I think we can get through it. Get copies of it out to the rest of the commission and maybe have a special meeting next week, and then we can still make the next council meeting.
If it makes.
You know, it's extra meetings and, Emily, could you do it on Zoom if?
No, I'm gonna be out of town and it won't be, unfortunately, I can't Zoom that meeting. I would love to, but I can't.
It's either that or wait and push our presentation back to council for the following meeting.
Okay.
When would the subcommittee have it in our hands?
We've got a meeting, a work session scheduled for tomorrow. And John has been turning around things very quickly and working.
I know what I'm doing on Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
All right, it sounds like the consensus is to get together again next week. So why don't we say Thursday, 1 week from tonight, same time, same place. You're all invited. Come on back. And we'll figure out where to go. All right.
And Emily, if Emily could write her thoughts.
Yeah.
If you could write your thoughts, email them, that would be great.
For next.
For next week, so if you get the draft in your hand within by Monday. I mean, I would love to know, you know, what you feel about.
Well, I actually wanna, share my thoughts.
Yeah.
I feel, a little pressure to answer it so quickly, and just, I'm gonna be leaving town on Sunday, and today's Thursday, and it's, almost 8:30. I've really put so much thought into when I do make comments and things like that, and I have other things I do too. So, as we all do. So, I just want to really, be able to put my thoughts down and, or say them in a good way.
Well, sounds like we have preference to get together from tonight, so we better do it. And do we need a vote on that or just consensus?
We need a motion for, I think a motion to hold a special meeting would be appropriate.
Good. Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion to hold a special meeting.
Second.
On February 22nd, 2024 at 5:30 PM here.
And who seconded that? Thank you, Bob. Let's do a roll call. We haven't done one of those yet tonight. All right, Rick Tarczynski.
Yes.
Vanessa Warren. Emily Dubay.
Is this, I'm sorry, is it?
Motion to, for the special meeting on next Thursday, the 22nd.
Oh, I can't make it, so do I supposed to say no? I'm
No,
not,
you can-
I'm sorry.
It's whether you're in favor of having the meeting that night or not. You can be yes or no.
Right, no.
Bob Thoma? Yeah. Tony Johnson?
Yes.
Bill Mulder?
Yes.
Mark Day? Yes. Barry Lustgarten?
Yes.
Nancy Rondell?
Yes.
I believe that was one no, and eight yeses, so the motion passes.
All right, planning commission members, any other comments or ideas? All right, thanks very much. And this meeting is adjourned.